Hey guys, this is Dr. Joe Borio with this week's Thought Flash. Thought Flash. Listen, let me explain where that word comes from. T-H-O-T, flash. Some people still a little confused about it, and that's okay, especially some of the young docs. Listen, B.J. Palmer would like to spell things phonetically. So as a result, he would spell thought, T-H-O-T, I can't spell it, T-H-O-T, to save time. He thought it was more efficient. So if you read a lot of the green books, BJ would write the word thought, T-H-O-T. So thought flashes meant from B.J. Palmer's, and that's a term that I stole from B.J. Palmer, or borrowed, if you will, right? What he thought is that he was in total connection with universal intelligence. Now, what does that mean? Universal intelligence is infinite, and what it means is that all the intelligence of creation, all the intelligence that is out there, the knowledge, if you will, that allows us to understand or control and regulate the entire universe. It's the matter, its structure, its timing, everything. Sometimes you can tap into that, and BJ would basically act as a conduit and felt like a lot of the thoughts that he had, T-H-O-T, the thoughts, there were flashes of thought that he felt. When he had those flashes of thought, he was in direct connection with universal intelligence. Some people might think that sounds a little crazy. I totally believe that 100%. And I'll tell you, another brilliant man, equally brilliant, of B.J. Palmer was Albert Einstein. And there's a quote I always like to read at our events, and it's a quote on universal intelligence written by Albert Einstein. And Albert Einstein said the same thing, that when he would sit there and have thoughts, he would like to be able to have thoughts of God. He would like to borrow the thoughts of God in Einstein's terminology, and those were thought flashes. He felt, in his own words, Einstein said he felt like he would be a conduit to universal intelligence, and that a lot of the knowledge and the ideas that he had were actually spurned or borrowed or taken from that constant flow of universal intelligence. It's all around us. Pretty amazing stuff, and really brilliant people. And forefathers to today's physics and metaphysics. So when you read, I love Giant versus Pygmy by B.J. Palmer, but when you read these books, some of them are tough to read. It's written in circa, if you will, so it's written in a date and time that isn't now, obviously. So the way he spoke and the way he would write sentence structure, and the fact that he would write fragmented sentences and so forth, was because he would write them in that type of date and time, but also in flashes of thought. As those thoughts appeared to him in his mind, as those thoughts came to mind, he wanted to write them down. And one of the other reasons, which is interesting, as you read a lot of Palmer, he wrote down so many different examples so that he didn't want anyone to be absent of the big idea. He didn't want anyone to lose sight of what was happening in the body when an adjustment was made, and what was happening in the body when the spine was subluxated, when the spine was sick, when the spine was out of alignment, when the spine lost its normal function. You would lose the connectivity, you would lose the brain's ability to communicate to the body. So when you read those words, you've got force, you've got matter, you've got energy, and that's the triune, and those entities would allow the body to function. That was, if you will, the entities of universal intelligence. And you have quantity and quality, right, of flow. So you've got a quantity of flow, the amount of energy, the quality, its frequency, its amplitude, and that's how we measure it scientifically, of the afferent and efferent, right, the mental impulses, the messages, the commands, the signals that go from your brain down the body out to the organs, and that information from the organs is going back up to the brain. So when the spine is sick or subluxated, right, sub less than, lux enlightenment, shun presence of, when we lose that ability for the body to communicate, what happens? We have a lessening of intelligence, a lessening of expression throughout the body, and what happens? The body doesn't work as well as it's supposed to, and as a result, the body starts to develop a state of dis-ease, which leads, if uncorrected, to disease, right? The body then develops a disease, but first into dis-ease, dis-ease, and it's an absence of light. Dis-ease is an absence of animation. It's an absence of life. It's an absence of God, if you will. It's an absence of innate intelligence from universal intelligence. The body is not being expressed the way it should. We are energy beings, and you guys have heard me talk about Francis Bowen a lot, and in his quote that we're not an organism. We're an intelligence served by organs. And again, I love that quote. It is so Palmer in just its entity of thought. How brilliant that man was in the philosophy chair at Harvard, that he came up with the idea that, listen, we're not all this. There's something else, and the body is a vehicle to serve that something else. That something else is the innate intelligence. There's an intelligence. We're an energy being. If my body dies immediately from a cyanide pill and I drop down dead, what's the difference between these two bodies immediately after, seconds after I'm dead? There's a life, there's an entity, there's an intelligence that no longer expresses. It doesn't reside. It doesn't reside in this vehicle. And that's what life is. That's the intelligence. That's the part of you that's part of God. That's the part of you that's part of the universe. And when you listen to a lot of the old stuff from Palmer, when you listen to a lot of the older stuff from Reggie, you start to realize that intelligence is so ancient, like ancient wisdom, right? It's so ancient, it's so infinite, it's so perfect. It's had so many years, millions and millions and billions and trillions of years to perfect itself, to perfect upon itself. So when we look at what message is the brain sending down the body, I don't know. I don't really know any of that. I know that there's some communication going on between brain and tissue, brain and body, and my job as a chiropractor is to ensure that communication can exist as best as it can be. If I come in at 80 and it's my first adjustment, listen, I'm never going to get it all the way. Quantity and quality is never going to be restored to the way it was when I was an infant, right? But hell, not getting adjusted means I'm never going to have proper communication. Now you read these stories on, you read this research on what? Cerebral spinal fluid and how that's improved throughout the body. You read studies on brain activity, brain efficiency, optical timing, meaning the eye can recognize an object faster, the brain can perceive that object faster after the adjustment. You're starting to read brainstem activity. You're reading studies on sympathetics and inhibition of the sympathetics and how that's lost with loss of normal spinal movement. You read all this research now on top of other research about the upper cervical and how it lowers blood pressure and how it calms down. It tells the sympathetic and autonomic nervous system calm down, and as a result the immune system works better and more efficiently, and the circulatory system works better, and the endocrine system works better. All of that research is there. I mean, there's never been a better time to gain certainty on chiropractic, because the philosophy of chiropractic is all right. The philosophy is right on. We are an intelligence served by organs, without question. So the philosophy is right, but the science now is, functional MRIs and different types of brainstem evoked potential testing and so forth is now starting to show how the brain and nervous system, afferent and efferent, quality of flow, quantity of flow, how that's improved upon greatly by the adjustment. And it's unbelievable. So it's a really exciting time to be a chiropractor. You can stand tall and proud. And you don't need to bring all this other stuff into your practice. I'd be upset if a nutritionist up the street was adjusting people. I think any chiropractor would be really upset. Listen, why are we being nutritionalists? I'm not saying nutrition is not important. I'm not saying it should never be touched upon. But, we were given this unbelievable discovery by D.D. Palmer, this gift that no one else can do. And if you're not adjusted, the nervous system and body will never work the way it's supposed to. Life will never be expressed through the body like it was supposed to be. So that's what you should be an expert on. Anything else, you're diluting the principle of chiropractic, and therefore they'll never get it. They won't value it as much. And your practice will be the result of that. And that's why a lot of chiropractors struggle, because they lack that certainty, that excitement, that passion for what it is that we do and the gift that's been bestowed to us. It's pretty exciting. Listen, we're out of time. This has been Dr. Joe Borio with this week's Thought Flash. Remember, may your innate flow from above down. Be happy, be proud, be excited to serve the people in your practice. I can't wait to talk to you guys next week.
My best friend gave me the best advice. He said